Good morning, everyone. I sit here and I listen to all of the comments and the presentation all was made, and I didn't hear any person mention anything at all about organic farming. Now, we know that in the Caribbean and the wider parts of the world, people are trying to move away from chemically grown agricultural produce. And somewhere in this, one of these sessions, the two that remain, I would like to hear someone advise persons who are in farming something about, helping to encourage organic farming and to give advice on what should and should not be done. In Barbados, we have ICA, we have persons from the FAO, and we have other interested partners, and they are advising people to do organic farming. And what I notice now is when you go to the supermarket, you have a small package, I don't know where it comes from, with your lettuce and your what this and thing, organic, grown organically. And that is where I believe that some farmers, I don't know who they are making the money. So please have somebody on the panel who knows about organic farming to say something about it. Thank you.
I just want to ask a question of carbon chemicals. As a lab apprentice, my first job in agriculture, and working at the Union Research Station, whenever chemical or any product came into the country, there was a trial plot. Is that still happening? And who is overseeing that trial? But that is kind of incestuous, to have agrochemicals, your own firm doing trial plots. It to me suggests there's a lack of validation, proper validation, and we need to look at that chain. Because it cannot be that you are the firm, you're profit making, you're doing your own trials, nobody's overseeing you. I am becoming frightened here.
Before the discussion started, I wrote down on my paper too much reliance on the agrochemical and other input suppliers for extension work. And I still feel very strongly about this, because what drives the extension of these input suppliers is business. You want to sell a product. And I think that our farmers and our consumers are being affected greatly by indiscriminate use of pesticides and other agrochemicals that are being entrusted upon them, or whatever word you want to use. They're being encouraged to use these things. And what has happened is that farmers no longer rely on extension of the Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Food Production, for extension advice, because they expect your response to always be, if they say, I have a problem, your response must always be, spray this. And if your response is not that, the farmers themselves don't believe that you know what you're telling them.
The old but not bad extension was mainly face-to-face contact, and this is still needed. But sometimes you don't have the means to bring all the extension officers to the field, because you don't have vehicles, you don't have fuels, you don't have repair parts, and so on. So, and you have an opportunity now with video, radio, TV, mobile phones to do extension, and you can combine the two. You can have your farmers' field schools mentioned by Dr. Dolly, but you have a number of opportunities if you want to use these new media, which are now cheap and easy to use. Everybody can learn how to use these things and use them to have more outreach and to combine these media-based services together, and also with face-to-face interactions. You can also make sure farmers can participate, because you can record a video and have it distributed through television to groups in various locations. And I think next generation of videos or extension services will be based on media, also on a number of services which research people can provide through those services. I think this is key for the future, not only in this region, but also in other regions, for instance, in Africa or in the Pacific. Thank you.
In any country that I go to in the Caribbean today, the number one complaint is the high cost of food. Unfortunately, the cost to produce an acre or a pound of lettuce organically is sometimes 2-3 times the cost of, in some cases, hold on, in some cases, depending on where you're growing it in Trinidad, depending on the location. But yes, there is a niche market for organic farming. I want to say that. I think it is something that we need to do. Caribbean Chemicals is moving towards, and the focus of Caribbean Chemicals for the last 2 years has been the plant health. First, let me explain that there is a role in every single country for the pesticide board. They will not allow bad chemicals or chemicals that they deem unfit for their particular eco-environment into the country without permission. So we cannot bring in any chemical that we just want to bring in and test to sell to make money. That is not true at all. It must be registered and it must follow world-class registration systems. Now the problems that we have in the Caribbean, and this is a phenomenon in Trinidad especially, and it's something that I think that we, jointly with the Ministry of Agriculture and other people, have to talk about and try and educate, is the farmers, if we say we use 1 teaspoon to a gallon of water, and they see a pest on their plant, they put 2 teaspoons and they spray it, or they put 3 teaspoons.
One of the things that this is bringing out, I know in Antigua that Caribbean Chemical do not come to Antigua and visit farms without the involvement of Ministry of Agriculture. We work hand in hand, and this is what I stress in that there's a need for collaborative work between all the bodies, and that would prevent some of and eliminate some of the problems.
Well, I still do not subscribe to the view that Caribbean Chemicals is educating farmers. I think they are training farmers in particular crop technologies, and we welcome that, in the context of the need to improve food production. But I take strong exception to the view that Caribbean Chemicals is educating farmers.
As I look at extension, and to go back to your question, and I just want us to think about it, that I throw this out. If you apprehend a robber, that doesn't make you a policeman. Somebody may do an extension function, but that doesn't make him or her an extensionist. And so in the profession of extension, we need to understand that extension is a profession. Just as policemen and nurses go through a period of training, there has to be a period of training. That's how I see it from my standpoint. And one of the things in the Caribbean that we must is to learn to respect that profession. And we have not been respecting it enough from the powers that be and from the society, etc. So let us differentiate what it is. If you catch a robber, you have done a good function, but that doesn't make you a policeman. To be the commissioner of police, you have to go through a period of training and many years. Just think about that.
We often hear farmers, it's not a complaint, that they do not see the extension officer. What I would like to ask is, should an extension officer cover all the farmers in the area, or should there be a ratio of farmer per extension officer?
Morning. In another incarnation of my life, I used to work with ICA in Trinidad. And we did a similar study to what you did in terms of asking the farmers, what was your most important source of information on technology? And at that time, in 1988, when I was a young child, the response was other farmers first. Yes. And I'm surprised, it's interesting that you say now it has changed to the input supplier, because at that time it was other
shops, not the input supplier.
The shops.
When you go and buy the chemical.
Right, so in the old days it was other farmers first, the input suppliers next, the extension officer, and then the ministry. What has brought about that change, do you think?
I just want to ask, I just want to ask the panelists, how do you measure the impact of extension on the farmer's bottom line? What are the indices statistically? How do you measure that? And then, have there been any studies that have been published where, in fact, you can point to how this has been measured and evaluated? And last thing, secondly, I wanted to tell some of the presenters there that in organic agriculture we never talk about pest control. We always talk about pest management. And if you teach the farmer how to manage pests, I believe that he'll be better off than helping him to control the pests. Because when you control pests, you use pesticides, you also use weedicides. Anytime you hear words end with side, you know it's death. Factricide, matricide, homicide, so it's death.
And this is in connection to how farmers respond to questionnaires and stuff. I was one of those that did my research among farmers in the Buccal area in Trinidad. These were largely sugarcane farmers who've had a long history of sugarcane production, switching to vegetable production. I worked in soil nitrogen. They would make a mound and apply their fertilizer on top of this mound, which is a soil that fixes a lot of nitrogen, etc., which is clearly not the right practice. Because of my work in this area, some of the farmers actually changed their practice. They were applying the fertilizer in the holes and everything else. They were getting the better results. It was a project sponsored by the GTZ. I graduated and moved on. And after I think I was working at ICA or something, the GTZ evaluated the project. So they called me out to go and visit some of the farmers. We actually met farmers who benefited from this experience, who adopted the technology. And then when the interviewer said he had no benefits from the project, that he was doing his current fertilizer, which is the recommended, he was always doing that sort of practice. So you sometimes have to be careful with what, how farmers respond.
Hey, please stop. Thank you. Yeah, I want to take off on the organic farming thing because I plant 3.5 acres of baigan. And in Trinidad we spell baigan B-I-G-A-N. And I went in the Namdevco market 3 o'clock 2 Mondays ago with $5 of baigan. I leave the Namdevco market at 6:15 with $5 of baigan. And I harvest now, and I reach my wit's end with that crop because it's 3.5 acres of baigan I'm talking about, not a little bit. Now, I want to raise a question about how many people were trained in extension over the last 10 years. What percentage of them actually working in extension today? Because I know a lot of people who are trained in extension doing teaching in junior and secondary school and all kind of things. On the question of the secretiveness, I'm glad that Dr. Paul raised the thing that the farmers get most of the information first from farmers, because that is my experience and my knowledge. We talk to one another. Maybe when your sales agronomists come around to sell the chemicals, they don't want to tell them that they're buying from your competitor, perhaps. And lastly, we have a problem with our generation, have a problem with the youths, and we complain a lot about them. But I have a complaint about our generation, is that we went through 30 years or 35 years on development, so maybe we fed up. Thank you.
In terms of what extension is, now I go back now to the definition of extension. Extension is an educational process. It's education. In fact, now when we speak of extension, we speak extension education. It does not basically refer to agriculture. It refers to medicine, engineering, astronomy. All these things use the basic principle of extension. Yes. And this is very important. In fact, I remember when the first, the way that we embraced extension in the Caribbean, we need to change. We need to rebrand that. the first MSc graduates of the University of the West Indies, when they went into the system in Trinidad and Tobago, they found that there was no position for extension. It's because there wasn't a profession called extension in Trinidad and Tobago. So most of the guys who were trained in extension had to find themselves in other things.